Awesome. Good afternoon, good evening to everyone. I am S.James. I'm pretty sure that's going to pop up in that picture next to my video post. Um, but I am here today to discuss my book for book review, which was Automating Inequality. I'm going to be utilizing my handy dandy cellular device and my nice notebook that has main key points that I wrote down to assist me in answering all of the questions that were brought up. So without further ado, we'll jump right into this. Again, the book that I read was Automating Inequality, How High-Tech Tools Profile, Police, and Punish the Poor. This book was assigned to me based on my last name. It was actually very funny because when she assigned books, she didn't have the letter J there. And so I actually had to email her because I was like, hey, I don't have a book. And so she had to put me in a group. So that's how I ended up with this particular book. And this was the only book that I did not initially purchase when the class began. I thought I got all of my books, but I did not. So this one I actually ended up purchasing on a digital copy on the Kindle app, which is why I will be utilizing my phone because I did take notes from the book and a lot of screenshots for things that I wanted to remember. What I expected from reading, or just the title of this book before getting into it, was to get a lot of heartless data kind of thrown at me and to tell me how all of these things should matter to me, right? But what I ended up getting from Virginia Eubanks's book was so much more than that. Like, I can tell from reading the book that she's invested in the cause of making things better because she went to these places to investigate them like herself. She didn't go based off statistics from the place or testimonies that she read somewhere. She personally went to get testimonies from people in Los Angeles, in Indiana, in Pennsylvania. And so to me, reading the people's testimonies like about what it is they're really going through made it less statistic driven, less numerically driven. That was just going to spew a lot of facts and numbers at me that at the end of the day, they won't really mean anything. I'm going to go back. So how did the book differ from my expectations or meet my expectations? Like I said, completely exceeded my expectations. It was completely different from what I expected, and I appreciated that. And the biggest thing that I take or am taking from reading this book is that technology is an amazing thing, and technology can be extremely beneficial. But technology can also be a hindrance, and technology can also be another way to discriminate against a person based off of past history, based off ethnicity, based off other programs that you have applied for. It really is a sense of like Big Brother is watching. And the book makes a reference to that too. Kind of how, during Ronald Reagan's reign, there was like a Big Brother kind of thing implied. Like the government is always watching. The government is aware of what you're doing. But really and truly in reading this and reading how the automated technology that we use, that we don't think anything of, right? As a person who has applied for food stamps before, I never thought anything about or differently about applying for them online, right? But in reading this book, applying for them online links everything else that I applied for, right? So then it starts to rate me as a person. It starts to make determinations about my life and predictions about my life that may not necessarily be true. And that's exactly what it did in the cases that were presented to us. That's exactly what happened to the people that lived in Indiana. And of course, I've only ever heard of Muncie, Indiana, in like a country song, right? The I Want to Talk About Me song. Let me talk about your grandma in Muncie, Indiana. I'm like, never heard of this place other than in this song. And so reading about it and reading about how they utilized this new system, and IBM came in and was like, yeah, we're going to automate everything. It's going to be so much easier. They made it seem like it was going to be a faster, streamlined process when so many people fell through the cracks. So many people, their information was lost and they lost their benefits, things that were beneficial to them. The family who had the little girl, I want to say it was the Stripes family, they had the little girl who was born with a disease, and her Medicaid covered her medication. Her medication was thousands of dollars, and her parents couldn't afford that. So for them to be able to just lose their coverage in such a way, to say that, you know, or imply that they lost coverage due to negligence, when that wasn't the case, when there are gaps in the system and there are holes in the system that took the people out of social work and made it more of a automated process, made it more a computer-based thing, then you lost so much, and the people lost so much in every single case, right? In Los Angeles, people that live on Skid Row being profiled for crime based off being homeless. Like, what a far-fetched idea that is for people who live in suburbia or middle-class people, to think that, hey, because you're homeless, you're automatically more prone to commit a crime. And so because you're more prone to commit a crime, I'm going to ask you all of these questions. And then I'm going to keep them on file for 7 years. And then I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to run these through all the different agencies. I'm going to run a police background on you. I'm going to run a drug background on you. I'm going to run a mental health background on you. I'm going to check how many times you've been to the emergency room. And I'm going to use all of those things to make a determination about the value of your life. Because really and truly, that's what these programs are doing. They're making a determination about the value of the person. And so, yeah, I do believe it's absolutely crazy. And then that is the main thesis of the book is, hey, we're utilizing technology to predict people's lives, the choices that they're going to make, right? We're utilizing technology to determine whether a child is prone to abuse in the womb, right? Like in Pennsylvania, the program that they're running, that's based from two professors from the University of New Zealand, right? The algorithm that they run for the program is trying to determine child neglect based off the mother's like prenatal care. Like if the mother didn't get proper prenatal care, then it keeps running to determine, to say, hey, this child is going to be prone to neglect and abuse, and we should remove the child. And then the sucky part about reading all of this, right, is that it affects a lot of African American communities and people of color in general. Not to be specific on just African Americans. However, the book does specifically speak about African Americans and not necessarily the Latina or Asian communities as much so as the 72% of African Americans who have been screened, and they are more likely to have their children taken from them and placed in foster care compared to their Caucasian counterparts, right? So the main thought process in the book is, one talks about state funding for like your Medicare, your Medicaid, your food stamps, your TANF. And then the next set talks about homelessness, and people who experience like chronic homelessness. And then the next portion talks about child advocacy and child welfare, making sure that children aren't being neglected and abused. And the culmination of all of those things is that, you know, we're using this technology, but it's hurting us, and it's hurting how we as Americans see policy. It's hurting how we as Americans vote and make a determination on what things to invest our vote in. So there's that. The the main thing that I took from what the author is trying to convey is that, yes, these programs may have good intention, but the way that they have been, that we've gone about them, it is hurting us more than anything. And so there has to be a better way to do this. We have to put the social workers back into social work. We have to put people back into it, because a computer system cannot necessarily gauge the true need that a person could gauge by talking to you and truly getting into what the root issue is. Moving away from the summary, because I do feel like I've delved into that deeply. I feel like my reaction, I've reiterated probably throughout the video that to me this is absolutely, it's such a far-fetched idea, but to realize that it's happening is just absolutely crazy. And the thing that I take from this, including the textbook, right? Because in reading the textbook, we look at the start of poorhouses and almsgiving and orphanages, and we think like these things are so far removed from us because they happened in like the 1600s, and the starting off in the 1600s and then traveling up through the 1800s until finally being demolished around the 1950s in the United States. You know, we think these things are so far removed, but really and truly, they've just found a new way to reinstitute it, to make it where maybe it is not a physical place, but now it is a digital place that we live in. And the book did change the way that I view automated systems now, right? Because if we think about the algorithms that run in Facebook, you could be searching something on Google and then it pop up on your Facebook. So all the more they're tracking, you know, your personal intimate details like your social security number and what you're going to the hospital for, and how many times someone may have called Child Protective Services for whatever the case may be in your life, or how many times you've applied for food stamps or TANF or Medicaid. It's such a, again, mind-blowing concept that it is being tracked and it is being utilized, and it is hurting people more than anything than it is helping them. So, in summary, again, the key points that the book makes is the how this is hurting us because the people have been removed. How it is hurting Americans, Black, white, Asian, Latino, whatever. It's hurting Americans that we run this process this way. And unfortunately, the people are the ones that pay, right? And in everybody wanting to streamline, or, oh, fraud is such a big deal, we have to repair our citizens. We have to reinstill trust in the citizens, or have it reinstilled in us, that the government really does have a desire to help those that are deemed as poor and those who are living in poverty. And Yeah, I just think overall this whole course is mind blowing, and I'm glad I got to delve into it.